Okay, hello everybody. I hope you're well. Stay safe, wash your hands, socially distance, wear a mask, all that good stuff. Good on you. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the organization of the course in specific ways and talk about the span of subjects that we're going to cover in more detail. And we're also going to talk about the basics of human beings and things to remember about them. Okay? All right. So open up your PowerPoint and watch the PowerPoint along with listening to this or watching this, okay? So what we want to do in this course is prepare you to think more broadly about human beings that you might see that are clients that you're offering clinical services to, whether those be counseling services or social work services or other things, nursing services, whatever it might be. Or to give you some information that would help you with your own relationships or the relationships of friends. Just things that you really should know. Now, I'm surprised still to this day that this information is not widely available to everybody. It's not taught regularly, and it really should be, at least in my humble opinion, because this is not rocket science. Okay? It's unusual, and the connection to this material is very personal, and I think you're going to get a lot out of this. All right. So we're going to learn what we talked about on the first night or day. And that is what you believe you're like, how you relate to others, what your values are, what you control, how emotions are useful, how to read people with nonverbal signals, at least in good ways, and not the infinite minute ways. They probably go into errors when they do that. How relationships operate and function, how to protect yourself and others in the process, and how to get what you want. Sound good? Okay, good. So things to remember about human beings. I have a drawing in here of paradoxes by Escher. It's not what he called it, but that's what I call it. He had impossible architectural drawings. He was an architect to start with. He also drew things. All architects draw pretty much, at least mechanically, but many are also artists. And he drew impossible, you go up landscapes or buildings, you go up one staircase and you can't go any further because it changes the complete orientation. It's fascinating stuff. What's a paradox? Well, at any single moment, things may seem entirely inconsistent or contrary or contradictory one from another. For example, life is both simple and complex. Life is both fragile and robust. You know? Those are examples of paradoxes. A paradox is not two physicians walking down the street. That's a paradox too. Different paradox. That's a pair of dogs. Okay, so people, I think, are a lot like icebergs. You know, icebergs are things that float in seawater. They're made of fresh water. They break off of or calve off of glaciers at the edge of oceans. A lot more icebergs now floating around. Some of them are big because the ice shelves are breaking up. They have to be very careful with shipping lanes now, even in the Southern Ocean and much more in the North Atlantic where the Titanic went down. There's a lot of huge icebergs. You don't hear much about that. So people are like this. Now the iceberg floats, and you see it. The part above the ocean is much smaller than the part below. That's like people. What you see is the tiniest part of people. Now, we often make a lot of assumptions based on those few little cues we see or hear, which are generally wrong. Yeah. So I can see, for example, your outer behaviors, how you speak or what you say, and what you do, how you do things, your behaviors, a little bit about your style, at least in that environment. But I don't know anything about your physical abilities. I don't know anything about your values, your experiences, your religion, your culture, your sexual orientation, your thoughts, your perspectives. Nothing. I don't know anything about that. That's the good stuff to learn about. That's the great stuff to learn about. You know, those are the things you will learn about if you really get to know somebody well. And so it takes a long time to really know somebody, which means immediately you should know that it's not a good idea to lend anybody that you just met or barely know any money or co-sign for anything or move in together or make babies together, those kinds of things. You don't want to do that sort of stuff because you really don't know somebody. There's a lot to learn. It takes time. Okay. So you may know me and I may know you, I know who you are, but you don't know who I am and I don't know who you are. Mainly because we make a lot of assumptions. You've made assumptions about me, haven't you? Sure you have. I wonder what those are. Don't want to know, but I wonder what those are. Okay. Now, there are some things that are invariably true. We call those axioms. These are axiomatically true statements. Most of the world is not black or white. In other words, most of the world is shades of gray, and I don't mean 50 shades of gray. I mean shades of gray. Yeah. There are very few absolutes in our lives. One absolute is we need oxygen to live. Okay, that's not what I'm talking about. I mean, the human condition, socially and individually, people are, we are multi-layered. We have lots of layers. Some of those layers are not even known to ourselves consciously. All behaviors serve more than one purpose. All behaviors originate from multiple sources. All people have adaptive parts and skills. I don't know anyone, including the most disabled person you might meet, who doesn't have additional adaptive portions. See? All right. Now, human beings do a lot of things that are not so great. One is we overgeneralize, we oversimplify, we rationalize, we justify. To keep us out of trouble, to avoid conflict, to get things we want, we tend to do those things. We also assume, as I talked about. Assuming is a time-saving effort. As you go through the world, if you spent all the time to get to know people and not make assumptions, it would be very difficult to navigate the world, right? So you make assumptions on, for example, if somebody is dangerous or not. You make assumptions quickly based on behavior. And you are on the side of, is this potentially dangerous? We don't spend very much time actually connecting. We spend too much time in front of screens. This has gotten really bad. We spend 75% of our waking hours distracted by what we are doing, and much of that is with some kind of screen, some kind of device. And we think that's connecting, but it's not. We were never meant to connect using electronic devices. That is not how human beings operate at their highest levels. We were meant to connect face to face, voice to voice, ear to ear. Okay? We tend to think what is beautiful is also good. We tend to think that anything that gives us pleasure in our senses is also good. So if we think a flower is beautiful, we think it must be good. And most flowers are, but some are poisonous. Moonflowers are poisonous. They're anticholinergic, and they can really cause you serious problems. So we tend to think that people who are beautiful are good. There's no relationship between what a person looks like and whether they're a good person or not, or whether they're smart or anything else. We have a cultural bias towards them, which we will talk about later. We'll talk about developing closer relationships, but that's what we do. We don't like change because change is stressful. But I'm here to tell you, if you can tolerate uncertainty and if you can roll with the uncertainties and move forward anyway, that's a very advanced and mature adaptability that works really well. We tend to think that whatever feels good must be okay. See, that gets you in a lot of trouble. Oh, this drink feels good, so drinking must be okay. This cigarette tastes great, must be okay. We tend to not know ourselves very well. I suggest that most people don't know themselves very well, and they don't really look very far. You can't change what you don't know about, of things that you might want to change, and you can't know about what you haven't examined. And in that process of examining ourselves, we have to accept what we find. So there's examining, and there's accepting, and knowing, and deciding what we want to change, and then we have to figure out how to do that if we want to change. And generally, we're talking about surface things that can make a big difference in changing, like smoking as a surface behavior. You change that, you can extend your life and save a whole bunch of money for you and for your family. We tend to then have a lot of things that are not so great that we do. We tend to get a lot of exercise from jumping to conclusions, flying off the handle, carrying things too far, dodging responsibilities, pushing your luck. A lot of good exercise. I would be in great shape if I did all those regularly. Not really. We tend to have instant or want instant gratification, and our world is designed to give us that. I'm guilty of instant gratification. I'm putting a video on my phone and uploading it to YouTube. That's instant gratification pretty much, although it takes about 30 minutes to do one of these videos and send it up. But think about that. Yeah, that's pretty interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Order from Amazon, get it the next day. Yipes. Now, humans have anxiety. It's a part of being an alive entity, a live biological species. All species have some level of anxiety from time to time, generally in terms of avoiding destruction, pain, danger. But humans have an unlimited memory and a tendency to imagine the future of things that have not happened. And so we can worry about things that haven't happened, and we can lament all the things that have happened, and we are easily outmaneuvered. Our thinking is outmaneuvered by base anxiety and other core emotions, which we'll talk about later in the course. Okay? Now, there are good things that we do. One of those is exhibiting kindness and mercy, and that's really a switch you pull. You decide whether in a moment you're going to do that or not. Exhibiting loving behaviors, having hope and joyousness, forgiveness, which is not what you might think it is at first blush, or I've been told. We'll cover that later. Planning and solving problems, we do all that great. And working together, boy, we do that better than almost anybody, almost as well as ants and bees. But ants are involved in reproduction and food storage, and bees are involved in those things too. They make one product, honey. We can do much more than either of those species, so maybe we could say humans are the best, huh? I don't know. That's egocentric or anthrocentric. Humans are very, very, very capable of something no other animal is, and that's imagination. I believe that is the singular thing that's different about human beings from other animals. I have no evidence yet, nor does anyone else, that suggests animals have imagination. Okay? Now, I have a picture of a fence here, and I want you to take a look at it in the PowerPoint. And on one side of the fence is green grass and longer grass, and the other side is cut, and it's not the same color because it's cut. And the thing I would say is that we're used to imagining how things would be better if we just had this or whatever with this person or the. But the thing you need to remember is that pasture that looks greener. Okay, fine, but at least you don't have to mow it. At least you don't have to mow it. You know what I mean? All right. So, have you ever been around somebody who was dying? I actually encourage you to take advantage of those opportunities, whether as a volunteer in hospice or with family members who are passing away, and get comfortable with that. It's part of life. Death is a part of life. And to learn to accept it. And when I return for part 2, I want you to consider the 2 questions that most people who are in the process of dying want to know the answers to. That coming up in a moment.